Hello, everyone. In this video, we're going to finish up our discussion about how to uh, add the maximum and minimum gradient lines on my t-squared versus h graph. So these are the maximum and minimum gradient lines on my t-squared versus h graph. And I've gone ahead and I've already made a little table. And if you'd like, you can pause the video and make your own table accordingly. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to add an artificial line as the best fit maximum gradient and best fit minimum gradient. So let's take a look at the maximum gradient. We want the maximum gradient that reasonably fits within our error bars. Okay, the maximum gradient that reasonably fits in our error bars. And the first thing we're going to need to do is estimate 2 points on either side for that maximum gradient line. So I'm going to go ahead and start by estimating that the base of my maximum gradient line will be at about, it looks like, I don't know, the point, let's say that point looks something like 0.6 and 0.1, all right? So about 0.6 and 0.1, and I'm going to go ahead and put those values in. I can always edit them later. Okay, 0.6, 0.1. And the top of that line is going to be somewhere around here. I'm not exactly sure, but maybe somewhere in this vicinity. So that looks like it's 7.4 or so and 2.4. So let's say this is 7.4 and 2.4. All right, so now I have some values. And notice I can always go in and edit these, right? These are up to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add these two data points, okay, these two data points as a separate data series in my table. I'm going to go to chart design and I'm going to go to select data. And in select data, I want a new data series. Okay, my original data series, my OG data series is just my data. Okay, so this is the raw data, or rather the process data of t-squared versus h. And then my second data series can have the title maximum gradient, because this is the maximum gradient line that I am plotting. My x values for the max gradient line will come from my two heights, and my y values will come from my estimated t-squared values. All right, and then we're going to add that data to the graph, and we can see it's plotted 2 points for us in orange here. Okay, now notice I can change those points as much as I want manually. So I can edit these numbers if I'd like to move those 2 points around. Then what we're going to do is, with these 2 points, we're going to add a new chart element. And in fact, we're going to add a trend line. And as you know, a trend line between two fixed points will give me a line exactly between those 2 points. For the trend line, I'm going to keep it as orange, but I'm going to make it just a little more visible here. So a solid line, sorry, that's what I want. Then I have that line, and then the final thing I want to do is actually hide my markers. So I'm going to go to the markers themselves. So right now I have the trend line, but I'm going to click on the marker. And we'll see if we can do this. Okay, I want the marker itself. It's still giving me the trend line. All right, great. So I want to format my data series. These are the markers themselves. And for my marker option, I want none. So I hid my markers, and boom, what I have is a best fit maximum gradient trend line. I have a best fit maximum gradient trend line here. Now, of course, for my trend line, I want to show that equation on the graph. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to display my equation on the graph and format it appropriately. So what might that mean? Well, just as before, I'm going to grab my variables here, right? So this is t-squared. This variable is h. Okay, and I can note, if I want, the appropriate number of significant figures. I can keep them all actually showing on the graph if I'd like, but I'm going to round it off just to reflect my uncertainty. Okay, So this will be 4, and this will be minus 0.10. And I'm also going to do a couple just visual things. Again, I'm going to have a solid fill of white. I'm going to add a border. My border is going to be orange, as shown. I can increase the font size here so that's a little easier to see. I don't think I successfully did that the first time, but increase the font size. And maybe I'm going to add one more label too. We're going to call this the max gradient, okay, just to make sure it's clear what this particular line is. And you can format it however you like, really. But this is my max gradient, right? And then I'm going to do basically the same thing for my minimum gradient. I'm going to pick 2 data points and show them on the graph, format it appropriately. In the next video, so why don't you go ahead and do that yourselves, get your minimum gradient together, make sure you've got appropriate points, adjust them visually, and then in the next video, we'll talk about the final steps of calculation for this particular lab.